I'm here to talk to you about child marriage. It is a topic that is really close to my heart. I'm very passionate about issues of women and children. So before I go into the talk, I just want you to do a short exercise for me. I want you to all close your eyes. Please all close your eyes for me. Everybody, I don't want to see any open eyes. Everybody close your eyes. And then I want you to think or look back at your childhood. Think about the time you were 10 years old up to when you were 15, your childhood through the age of 15 to 18. And while you're reflecting on that, I want you to think about or even reflect on some of the things you enjoyed doing most in your childhood. What were some of the things you enjoyed doing? What were some of your dreams and aspirations? Can you think about that? Can you reflect and remember? What did you think? As children, we like to dream and say, oh, this is what I will do when I grow up. Think about those things. Now I want you to open your eyes. I just want maybe one or two people to tell me, what were some of the things you enjoyed doing as a child? Just one or two, because there's not much time, so I won't go through everybody. Just one person to, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's being a child. Any dreams, aspirations? What are some of the things you dreamt about when you're a child? To be an adult. All right. Okay, so I want to just ask a quick question as well. In your reflection, how many of you actually, when you looked back at your childhood, ever thought in your childhood or desired to be in a marriage, raising children, taking on family responsibilities? Did anybody think of? Nobody as a child, right? Okay. In your childhood, how many of you can tell me they didn't have any dreams or aspirations? How many of you? Nobody, right? We all have dreams and aspirations. We all want to be somebody in life. We all think of, when I grow up, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm sure most of you came across that question as children when they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a teacher. All these things that come up when you ask children what they want to be when they grow up. So I believe every child has some kind of dream. Every child loves to go out and play and hang out with friends and just be a child, be silly. And as a child myself, I enjoyed doing those things. I enjoyed playing, hanging out with my friends, just being a child and being silly. Those are the things I thought about because I'm a child. I should be allowed to be a child and do those kind of things. But unfortunately, so many millions of children around the world don't have the privilege of being a child. It's very, very sad out there. And the saddest thing I find is that the same people or the very people that are supposed to be protecting them, that are supposed to be looking after them, are the very ones that actually sentence them to lives of suffering. I found that to be very sad. Now, some of you may ask yourself, an academic, what is she doing with issues of children? Yes, I'm an environmentalist, but because I work a lot in development, I work a lot on development issues, this is how I came to discover some of these issues. I wasn't always aware of issues of child marriage. So the question I ask myself all the time is, what will it take to end child marriage? I ask myself this question all the time. So I want to just take you, before we even get into the issue of child marriage, I just want to ensure that we are all on the same page when we are talking about children, what do we mean, okay? And if you look at that definition, basically a child is every human being below the age of 18. And that is according to the United Nations Convention on Rights of Children. And then I put in this quotation, I really love it, by Nelson Mandela, because when I'm talking about these issues, I like to also relate them to issues of human rights as well, because we all have certain rights, and when we are treated in a certain manner, some of our rights are violated. So I love this definition or this quotation, and I put it there so that you can have it at the back of your mind as I talk through this whole process, so that you can understand and you'll see how it then starts to fit in. But As you're all aware, we all have our rights. Children are also human beings who have rights. I know there's a tendency to say, no, they are just children, they can do whatever, but they also have rights. And they are, if you go to the document of children's rights, you'll find a lot of them there. But what I want to really bring out through this talk is to highlight what it means for the children's right when we impose marriage on them. And this is basically for children. When imposing marriage on children, it is really a grave violation of their human rights. It is to challenge their humanity. It is to deny them their right to dignity, education, health, a life free of abuse and coercion, freedom of thought, a right to be safeguarded against neglect and exploitation, and a right to choose as an adult whether and whom to marry. It is also to deny these rights is really to dehumanize them. So I want you to keep this at the back of your mind as I go through this talk. And now I just want to share with you and take you through how I came to develop an interest in child marriage. Because I'm sure some of you will be wondering, is she a child bride herself? How come she's so passionate about this and she's talking about this? No, I'm not a child bride. Actually, I had the privilege of enjoying my childhood because thank God, I had parents who allowed me to be a child and allowed me to dream and allowed me to aspire to be who I am today, allowed me to go to school. And because my parents were educators, they really instilled in us the importance of education. And for them, education was no option. We had to go through school and really get the best education that we could. So my interest in child marriage came 7 years ago when I was on a mission in South Sudan. I had gone there to do some project evaluations of, there is a lot of international agencies there having development programs. So I was there to evaluate some of those projects. And you can see me, I had to, you can see me right there and right there, right there. And you can see I had to dress like them so that I could just fit in and be able to interact with them. But on this visit, I met a young girl who was on the team of field workers that were going to work with me. And this young girl showed so much interest on how I became to be where I am and how come I could come in and do all this work, because they are not used to girls or women coming in to do this kind of work. They're used to men doing the work. So she was really curious, and I started expressing myself and telling them she wanted to know what my childhood was like as well. So I began to also engage with her, and she became she became very close to me in the process, and we started to talk a lot, and she started to tell me about her story as a child and what she had gone through. And it is then that I came to learn that she had been married off when she was 12. And she started explaining to me the processes that she went through before she even got married. And she told me the challenges that she had experienced during that process. And then she went on to narrate how she had been circumcised. And then because through circumcision is when they become women and ready for marriage. So she told me that process of circumcision. She told me how she had been stitched up and just left a small hole enough for her to be able to urinate and have her menses. So for me, that was a shock. And I just could not understand how it is possible in this day and age to do such things. I had never heard of such things, so you can imagine the shock I had. And for a minute there, I thought, maybe I'm dreaming and somebody's telling me all these stories, and because I could not believe it. It was just unbelievable for me. And as she went on, at some point, actually, my mind went so far that I couldn't understand what it is that she was trying to tell me. So I kept asking her all these questions. And I said, are you real? Are you telling me the truth? And she says, this is the honest truth. And my story is not the only one, because all the girls that you see around here have gone through the same thing. And from that day forward, I just said to myself, I need to go and educate myself more on child marriages, understand what it's about. See, are there any more stories out there like this? Because I was still in total shock, trying to understand how this could be allowed to happen. So that is how I got involved in really looking into issues of child marriage and their impacts. So on my quest to understand the practice and the magnitude of child marriage, I came across so many stories as I was doing these searches. And I came across a number of images. I listened to a lot of stories. I read a lot of stories. And I realized this is really, really sad. So I'll just quickly run through the images. I'm not sure if maybe later on this can be allowed for people to view some of the stories just to see what it looks like. But these are just some of the stories I came across. And this is Tanzanian child brides. So all these images I'm showing you, I've read the girls' stories and I've seen what they have gone through and the challenges that they have gone through. And what I found most sad, I'm sure most of you have maybe seen some of these images before, but this young girl, her story really made me sad because when the news broke about this 8-year-old who had been married to somebody 20 years her senior, and how she told her story of how she had struggled through the marriage and how she eventually got the court to allow her to divorce this man. It is an amazing story. If you can look it up, you will really cringe and see the kind of impact it has. And then some of the other stories I came across were such as those. You can see this is a 16-year-old screaming and really not wanting to go to this home because I think they understand what kind of pain. So imagine having to go to a home of a stranger as a child. You know, you've been in this home, you've been protected, you are with your family, and now you are being sent off to a stranger. And you are going to take on all these responsibilities that are really not meant for children. So it's a very painful experience. And what disturbed me most is that most of these girls are not allowed to continue school. That is the saddest part. So they are taken out of school, and that has an impact on their education. And then worse things, it impacts on their health because most of them fall pregnant once they get into these marriages. And you can imagine a young girl having to carry the pregnancy through to 9 months and then having to deliver. And I also discovered that most of them suffer from a medical condition called fistula. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, where basically through this process, because the child's body hasn't developed well enough, they cannot give birth, and in most cases they rupture. And in some cases, they have the fistula is when they have that hole between the vagina and the anus. And what happens, the whole system is messed up. So you have the urine and the feces coming all, and once they go through that process, what usually happens, their husbands divorce them, they are isolated. And in most cases, these children are locked away because this comes with stigma and shame. So, and because you are always smelling and you're dirty, so they lock you away. So you suffer with loneliness. And this is a child. These are children that we're supposed to protect and love, you know, but they are going through this process through all these difficulties and challenges at this time. And then this also made me ask the question, you know, in my work of gender and women's empowerment, you know, we come across, we come across so many statistics about women being poor, women having the face of poverty. And then, you know, you look back at some of these things that happen and you ask yourself, if there are millions of children being forced into marriage and not allowed to continue their education, where their dreams are shattered, can you tell me how will they then in their adulthood be able to perform and contribute to the development of their nations, their communities, their households? What happens? So it becomes a cycle. They enter the cycle of poverty. And every year, we have at least 15 million children being married off before the age of 18. And as you can see from those statistics, we have 1.2 billion that are actually gone through this process. And you find that 1 in 3 girls in the developing world are said to be married before the age of 18. So I looked at those statistics and I found them quite shocking. And then I also went ahead to also look at some more on what was going on in various countries. And if you look at those statistics, you will notice that out of those 20 top countries with the highest rates of child marriages, 18 of them are African countries. And then we are talking about why we are behind in development. So you ask yourself, if we are actually cutting off most of these children that have really high potential to contribute to the development of their nations, and the development of their communities and households, how do we expect to ever move forward in terms of human development? Because we are blocking them, we are cutting off their dreams. They don't get to realize their potentials. They don't get to contribute. So it's a very, very sad situation. And I'm hoping that from here, some of you will go back and educate yourself about some of these issues and advocate and put your voices out there. Because for me, when I discovered these things, one of the things I told myself is that for every single platform I get, wherever it is, I will continue to talk about these stories until every single child is free. Make yourselves aware of what is happening and find a way that you can contribute, find a way that you can engage. There are so many programs going on around, there are so many activities happening to try and prevent child marriages. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about it, and so they don't engage so much. When I see protests happening, I always wish that we could have some national protests with the hashtag End Child Marriage. You know, in our countries, whether you have a high rate in your country or not, in your community or not, but in solidarity of those who are actually having these high rates and the girls who are suffering, just to free them, so that one day every single child, girl child especially, will be able to enjoy the freedom of being a child, the freedom of going to school, the freedom of realizing their dream, the freedom of realizing their potential, and being able to choose who they can marry in adulthood and not have to go through those processes. A lot of them get beaten. And then I ask myself, why would a man want to marry a child and then take this child into his home and abuse the child, beat them up? What joy do they get from that? It is one question I've always wanted to ask men who are actually engaged in these practices. What do you gain from a child bride? We've had in Sierra Leone, they're allowed to marry off 9-year-olds. In most countries, in most African cultures, the culture allows them to marry children before, the girl child before she reaches puberty or before she reaches her menses, because it's a sign of blessings that comes upon the family when the girl goes when she's pure. Some of them believe it is to protect her because they believe once they reach puberty, they are likely to run around and lose their virginities early, and therefore they are trying to protect them. And if you see the horror stories that come from these children when they tell their stories, it is terrible. And I think we all need to unite together and fight some of these traditions. Some of it they claim because of poverty, which a family decides, I cannot afford to feed all my children. And she looks at the girl child and says, well, this one we can marry off because she brings income to us. There are families that believe that. So some believe that girls are commodities. So there are a lot of traditions that don't value the girl child because they see them as people who are useless. So I just wanted to highlight that we need to start engaging in these discussions, and it's about time we say, when is enough enough? When do we say enough of abusing our girl children? And I wanted to leave you with this image here, because this is a female chief in Malawi who has now said enough is enough. And she has actually managed to annul more than 850 child marriages in Malawi, in the county that she's working in. And she has also managed to work with a lot of chiefs and made them sign contracts, because in Malawi they have now passed a law that the age on which a girl can marry is now 18, but they are trying to raise it to 21 because they feel 18 is still young. But you know, even with the laws that we have today, there's so many loopholes, because in most laws, it allows that even though they prohibit the marriage of a child, they say that if parents consent, then it can be allowed. So that is a problem. So when I looked at all the initiatives that are happening to end child marriage, personally, I felt the most effective one would be to actually directly target the men who are marrying these children, and also the parents. So when I looked at all the initiatives that are going on, I felt like what is being done is actually not enough. We need to target the men who are marrying the children and the parents who are actually giving away their children to be married. Educate them, let them understand the value of a girl child, understand the girl needs to be given that opportunity. So for me, that has been very important. And then I'll leave you with that quotation: to educate girls is to reduce poverty. It is very important. Thank you very much.